Have you ever felt like an invisible piece in your own family? As if your opinions, efforts, and feelings were ignored, while everyone around you carried on as if you were just a background detail. This story is about a woman who, after years of being underestimated and devalued, made a courageous decision that changed everything. It all started with a family dinner. But it wasn't just any dinner. It was the kind of gathering where everyone is present except one person. And as strange as it may seem, it was precisely her absence that brought to light truths that no one wanted to face. Today you'll discover how this woman transformed her pain into power. How her absence made her family finally listen to her. But tell me, have you ever faced a situation like this? Have you ever felt that you would only be heard if you stopped trying to please? Share your experience in the comments, and of course don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This story will move you and, who knows, inspire you to transform your own reality. It was a seemingly ordinary evening. The table was set, filled with carefully prepared dishes and drinks, as always happened at family dinners. But that night something was different. In Clara's usual place, the chair was empty. Clara had always been the silent heart of the family, the one who organized everything behind the scenes, who prepared everyone's favorite dishes, and who was always there to put out emotional fires before anyone even noticed. However, most of those present never thanked her. In fact, they barely noticed her presence, except when they needed something. But that night, Clara decided she wouldn't be there. After years of being ignored and devalued, she finally had the courage to say no. She left the house in silence, without giving explanations. As the family gathered, Clara's absence began as a minor inconvenience. "Where's Clara?" someone asked. Another replied dismissively, "Probably busy with something as always." But as the minutes passed and dinner went on, her absence became impossible to ignore. The mess started to appear, literally and emotionally. The main course was undercooked, the rice was burnt, and the mood at the table was tense. It seemed that no one knew how to organize things without Clara there to fix everything. And it was at this moment that the first uncomfortable questions began to arise. Do we depend on her more than we imagine? Why have we never asked if she's okay? However, the full impact of her absence was yet to come. The silence at dinner was almost deafening. Without Clara to guide the conversations, keep the atmosphere light, or resolve minor conflicts, discomfort took over. The older brother, Lucas, who rarely noticed details, was the first to break the silence. "Have you guys noticed that Clara never misses? I think it's the first time she hasn't been here." The mother, always the first to minimize any situation, tried to respond in a casual tone. "Clara must be busy with something. You know how she is, always running around to solve her things." But this time the attempt to ignore the situation didn't stick. Lucas, with a furrowed brow, retorted, "Or maybe she's tired of solving things for everyone." That phrase landed like a bomb. It was as if he had said out loud what everyone already knew, but never had the courage to admit. Clara had always been there for everyone, but who was there for her? Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Clara was finally breathing a sigh of relief. For the first time in years, she decided to take care of herself. Sitting in a small cafe, she flipped through a book she had long wanted to read, but never could. There were no last-minute requests, no disapproving looks for food that wasn't perfect. Just her and the silence that, at that moment, seemed more welcoming than any family dinner. Back at the table, Clara's father, who was normally the quietest of the group, finally spoke. "She's always been here. Always. And she's never complained about anything. Have we been fair to her?" Reflection began to spread through the group. Awkward comments about how Clara is good at that, or she's very helpful, arose, but there was a tone of guilt in their words. For the first time, the family began to realize that Clara was not just a supporting figure. She was a person with feelings, needs, and perhaps a limit that they had never bothered to understand. But how could they fix this? And more importantly, would Clara be willing to accept their attempts? The morning after dinner, the family still seemed restless. Clara's absence had left not only a physical void, but also an emotional discomfort that no one could ignore. Lucas, who had always been the most practical, decided to take action. He called Clara. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. Frustrated, he sent a short, direct message. "We need to talk. Please let me know when you are available." On the other side, Clara saw the message but did not respond immediately. For the first time, she did not feel the need to rush to put out the fire. Instead, she continued to enjoy her day, dedicating time to something she had always postponed, taking care of herself. Meanwhile, Clara's mother was rummaging through old photo albums. Each image seemed to tell a story she had never paid attention to before. Photos of Clara organizing parties, taking care of her siblings, helping her father with household chores. In every moment Clara was there. But where were the others when she needed them? "I don't think I've ever asked how she really feels," said the mother, her voice full of regret. Clara's father shook his head in silence. He had always had difficulty expressing feelings, but he knew deep down that Lucas was right. They had depended too much on Clara without ever recognizing her worth. That afternoon the family decided to meet again, this time to discuss what really mattered: how to repair their relationship with Clara. "There's no point in pretending this didn't happen," Lucas began. "We need to be honest about how we treated her." The conversation was difficult but necessary. Between apologies and painful reflections, the family began to draw up a plan to regain Clara's trust. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to show that her absence would no longer be ignored. However, there was a question hanging in the air. Would Clara be willing to give them a second chance? 2 days later, Clara finally responded to Lucas's message. It was short, as if she was still processing the impact of her decision. "We can talk. I'm available tonight." At nightfall, Clara arrived at her parents' house, where the meeting was scheduled. She felt a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. For years, she had endured the burden of being the person who held the family together. And now she was facing a completely new situation. They wanted to hear her. As she entered, Clara noticed something unusual. The table was set, but this time without the usual excesses. There were no fancy dishes or a tense atmosphere to impress. It was simple, honest. For the first time, it seemed that the focus was not on showing but on feeling. "Clara," Lucas began, breaking the silence. "Thank you for coming." She nodded but remained silent, waiting for them to speak first. The mother was the next to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. "I think we failed you. For years, we assumed you would be there for everything and everyone, but we never stopped to ask how you were." Clara felt a lump in her throat, but she maintained her composure. Finally, it was her turn to be heard. "For a long time, I wondered if I had any value beyond what I did for you. It wasn't about love or respect, but about function. I was the person who solved everything, but no one bothered to know how I felt." Clara's sincerity hit everyone like a punch to the stomach. Lucas, who rarely showed emotion, looked at her with regret. "You're right. We were wrong. But we want to fix this if you'll allow us." There was a pause, and then Clara asked a question that silenced the room. "Why now? What changed?" The mother replied with tears in her eyes. "Because we realized what really matters. Your absence made us see how much we depend on you, but also how much we neglected you. We want to do better." Clara looked at each of them, seeking sincerity in their eyes. It was difficult after so long to believe that the words could be true, but at the same time, something in her heart said that this moment was real. She took a deep breath and replied, "I can't promise it will be easy, but I'm willing to try with one condition." Everyone waited anxiously as Clara continued. "I need you to see me not for what I do but for who I am. I want to be part of the family, not just someone who solves problems." Clara's words were met with nods and discreet tears. They knew it would not be easy to rebuild trust, but they were determined to do what was necessary. From that night on, the family began to change, but progress came in small steps, not always linear. Clara knew that it wasn't enough to hear promises. She needed to see concrete actions that showed that her family was committed to change. The first positive sign came the following weekend. Clara received an unexpected invitation in the family messaging group. "Clara, let's make dinner this time. Just bring yourself." She hesitated for a few moments before replying. After all, doubt still lingered about their intentions. But she decided to go. Upon arriving, she was greeted with warm smiles and a surprise. Lucas was in the kitchen, awkwardly struggling to prepare the main course. "I can't guarantee it will be as good as yours, but I'm trying," he said with a somewhat guilty smile. Dinner was simple but full of meaning. For the first time, Clara was not asked to organize, serve, or clean up. Instead, her parents and siblings made a point of taking care of everything. It was a small gesture, but it spoke louder than any apology could say. Another change came in the conversations. Before, Clara was the silent listener, but now her voice had space. When she talked about a project at work or a new hobby, the family listened with genuine attention, something that had seemed impossible before. But not everything was perfect. At one point, Clara's mother, out of habit, tried to delegate a last-minute task to her. "Clara, can you organize Sunday lunch?" Clara took a deep breath and replied firmly, but without rancor. "I can't do that this time, Mom, but maybe you guys can plan it together." The silence that followed was uncomfortable, but necessary. Gradually, the mother realized the impact of her words and agreed. "You're right. Let's figure this out." These small moments began to create a new dynamic. Clara realized that her absence at the initial dinner had done more than draw attention. It had planted a seed of reflection and transformation. Even so, Clara knew that rebuilding years of family patterns would take time. And she also understood that her responsibility was to set clear boundaries and defend her space, without returning to the role of official problem solver. As the weeks passed, Clara felt something change within herself. For the first time, she began to experience a sense of lightness, as if an invisible weight was finally coming off her shoulders. More than the family's actions, it was her own decision to prioritize herself that made her see things differently. One of the most significant moments occurred on a casual outing. Clara, her mother, and her niece decided to spend the afternoon in a nearby park. During the walk, her mother began to talk about how she had always thought that Clara was strong enough to handle everything. "You know, I've always admired how you managed to handle everything. But looking back now, I think I used that as an excuse to never offer help." Clara listened to the words carefully. Although they didn't erase the wounds of the past, they represented a recognition she had never received before. "It was hard, Mom. Many times I felt like I needed to be perfect to deserve a place in the family." The two stopped to sit on a bench, while her niece played near a lake. "I know I can't change what happened, but I want to try to be better from now on," said her mother, with a sincerity that deeply touched Clara. Meanwhile, Clara's siblings also began to show signs of growth. Lucas, who always seemed distracted by his own life, now made a point of consulting her on important decisions. He asked for her opinion on a new job and, to Clara's surprise, actually followed her advice. "I never thought your perspective would be so clear. We should have listened to you before," he admitted, somewhat embarrassed. These gestures, although small, began to rebuild the worn-out bonds. Clara realized that, by standing up for herself, she not only claimed the respect she deserved, but also taught her family to value authentic connections instead of superficial roles. But there was one final proof that the dynamic had really changed: the next big family dinner. This time, Clara knew things would be different. The next family dinner arrived, and Clara felt a mixture of anxiety and hope as she prepared for the evening. She didn't know exactly what to expect, but she was determined. If something went off the rails, she wouldn't hesitate to defend herself. As she entered her parents' house, she was greeted with a warmth that felt different, more genuine. Everyone was there, busy with preparations. Lucas was stirring a pot, while her mother adjusted the cutlery with a care that Clara recognized as an effort to make her feel valued. "You arrived at the right time," said Lucas with a smile. "Just don't expect perfection. I'm still learning." Clara laughed. It was the first time in a long time that she felt genuine joy in being there. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally, but there was a moment when Lucas asked for silence. He raised his glass and made a toast to this dinner, and more importantly, to Clara. Everyone looked at her, and Lucas continued, "Clara, we know how much you've meant to this family, and we also know it took us way too long to recognize that. We're not just here to thank you, but to promise that we'll do our best to value you. Not for what you do, but for who you are." Clara's eyes filled with tears. It was the kind of recognition she never imagined receiving, but at that moment, it felt like more than just words. It was a palpable shift. "Thank you for giving us a second chance, daughter. And thank you for showing us how to be a better family." Clara responded with a smile, her voice steady but gentle. "Thank you. And I want you to know that I'm learning to value myself too." This is new for me, but it's something I won't let go of. The dinner continued, filled with laughter and memories being made. Clara knew the journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt she wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. Her absence at the initial dinner had been the catalyst for a rebirth. Not just for her family, but for herself. As the night ended, Clara went home with a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Belonging. Not for being useful, but for being who she was. Sometimes it takes courage to step away and allow others to see the void your absence leaves. Clara learned that valuing herself was the first step to teaching her family to do the same. And you? Have you ever had to step away to be heard? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Who knows, your experience might inspire someone to take the first step towards change.
Hi, you are on the Moving Narratives channel. Subscribe and follow our stories.